Welcome to the Augusta Sports Report, hosted by Chad Cook. For more information on what we talked about today, visit augustasportsreport.com.
Okay, welcome to episode 2 of the Augusta Sports Report. We're at the studios at Allison South at Augusta Podcast LLC. I have a special guest, Ashley Brown, the sports personality when it comes to media here in the Augusta area for decades now. Before we get started on the first week of high school and college basketball and then talking about playoff football, I want to talk to Ashley. Ashley, tell us about your sports journey from being a player to a commentator. You've worn all the hats in the media business here in our area, and take us through that journey.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Chad, and thanks. So excited that you're doing this, by the way. I did start as a player. I loved sports as a kid growing up. Early on, actually, football is the sport I loved the most. But as I got a little bit older, my parents went through a divorce. I moved in with my grandparents briefly, and they lived in Richmond County. They lived, right around the corner sort of from the boys club. So, my parents had no clue I'd ever even played basketball. They would sign me up for rec football and baseball every year. But every day I was going to the boys club just playing basketball. So we had a function at my school. I was in 3rd grade. We had a function at John Millage. Yeah. And my parents came to, and part of it was a basketball kind of obstacle course. And when my parents came to it and we left, they're like, "Where did you learn how to play basketball?" I said, "Well, all day. That's all I do at the boys club." So basketball, I just fell in love with it, and just like you did. And I just, even during football and baseball season, I played those sports, but we'd get through with baseball practice and I would go to the Y on Wheeler Road and stay for 4 hours until they closed. They'd have to make us leave. And so as I got older, playing in high school, I played at Evans for 3 years, and I was at Lakeside and ended up going and play. I got a scholarship to play at it's funny, I was going to go to Armstrong State. And somehow, Danny Black at Evans, I had transferred to Lakeside. So the fact that he did this was pretty awesome. But a coach at Reinhardt Community College, it's a 4-year school now, but it was a junior college then, Gerald Sharp, his brother had coached at Arkansas Monticello. And I don't know if you remember the name Greg McMillan, yeah. Greg and Scott. They both played at Evans. Greg was a really good player at Evans and signed at Arkansas Monticello. And he played for Gerald Sharp's brother out there. So Gerald knew Danny Black from that whole thing. So he called and said, "Man, I'm really needing a point guard. I got a kid that I thought I was going to get. I didn't get." And Danny said, "Well, I got this kid. He might be going somewhere already. I'm not sure." So he called me, and I went on a visit, and I just fell in love with the place. Private school, beautiful campus, and a chance to play right away. And I went there, played for 2 years, probably two of the best years of my life. Just really loved it. And then I went to Columbus State from there and played. Now, a different experience completely. At Reinhardt, I played all 40 minutes, and I was, I was one of the top guys on the team or whatever. When I went to Columbus, though, we were loaded. We had some good players back then.
Peach Belt Conference.
Oh, man. And I played for Herb Green, who had recruited Charles Barkley to go to Auburn. Real colorful figure. Herb was the best. And, we had just a loaded team. We actually won the Peach Belt my first year there. But that meant less playing time for me. And it was I look back on it now and I'm like, God, what an awful kid and teammate I was back then. I probably had the worst attitude. And, but then my senior year, I played a little bit more, but I also got into the role of, look, I'm not going to the NBA. I'm not going overseas. I'm going to take this for what it's worth. And I really was going to go into coaching there. So I played, and then I spent a year as a student assistant. And what happened, I got an opportunity on one of the road trips. The guy who did the radio broadcast for the team needed somebody to do the play.
Same guy as today, right?
Scott Miller.
He's awesome.
Same guy, and he's phenomenal. And Scott said, "Hey, on one of the road trips, do you want to do the game with me?" Well, I did it, and man, I just loved it. Yeah. And I'd always thought it would be cool to be a commentator. As a kid, I'd memorized the back of baseball cards, and I knew stats. But I just thought, that's a hard endeavor to take. You've got to be a former player or know somebody or son of somebody. And but I always in the back of my mind thought, man, I'd love to do that. And then it's a weird thing. After I finished school, I moved to Athens, and I was just playing around, not really doing anything serious. My father passed away, and I decided to move home. And when I did, I just called out of the blue Ron Mackey at North Augusta and said, "Look, I'm moving home. I'm finishing my degree. I'd love to help out." I volunteered to help. Well, that was 1995, one of the best years for basketball in this area. North Augusta was loaded, and they had, obviously we had Antonio Grant, who was an incredible player at South Carolina and a longtime player overseas as a pro. We had a great team. And we lost 2 narrow games in the regular season to Westside, who was pretty loaded
like
then.
Everybody did
with
that
Ricky Moore, William Avery. But the cool thing that happened after the season, I get a call. Our season was over. We got knocked out in the Elite Eight by Hillcrest out of Simpsonville, South Carolina. And I get a call, and still to this day, I don't know who told them, but Lee and Betty Beard had started an all sports radio station by mistake. Denny Mclean, former baseball pitcher. He was a Cy Young Award winner in 1968, last 30-game winner actually in Major League Baseball. He had moved here, was leasing their radio station that used to be a blues station. At one time, James Brown owned it, and he turned it all sports. Well, right after that, he gets indicted for tax evasion, goes to federal prison.
Okay,
so they're now stuck. They're now stuck with a radio station that's now all sports. Yeah. Knew nothing about sports, and they were trying to do a local show, and they were trying to do stuff. They end up deciding one of the ways to help us get into the community locally is do this basketball. So they did. Josie actually ended up making it to the state finals against Westside. Yeah. So it was 2 local teams.
And you broadcast that?
Well,
I remember watching it on TV.
Well, here's what happened. I didn't broadcast it. They I think Charles McNeil might have. They already had a broadcaster, but they needed somebody here. So they asked me, hey, somebody told us you know a lot about local sports and basketball. Can you help with the broadcast? So I thought I'm going to be doing like stats or whatever. I get there and I'm doing like the pregame show and the halftime show. I've never been on the air other than that one little snippet, and it was so funny. And then I guess from that, a couple of people called the station and said, hey, is that the Ashley Brown that went to Evans or Lakeside or whatever? So they thought, we got 2 guys doing the afternoon show. One is from Michigan and one's from like Cleveland. Maybe we can get a local person in there. So I would start filling in. Yeah. And then when it came time for me to go back to school, I was finished. I was ready to try and coach. And when that time frame was about to come up, about a month before the summer was over, they offered me a job. And that's what led to there. And about a year and a half later, Beasley Broadcast hired me. I stayed there for 20 years. And over the course of that time, I've written probably 2,500 columns for the Augusta Chronicle, the Columbia County News-Times, and now with the Augusta Press. And we've done high school football every year for like 27 years, whether it be on radio or TV somewhere. And then it's led to some other cool stuff. Hosting shows, filling in for Austin Rhodes, or I did a TV show briefly with Comcast. But the main thing I did was a sports show, a local sports show on the radio for years, and had a blast doing it, loved it. And that's, so a few years back, a buddy of mine started a grill company, and he had wanted me to come over there, and I was sort of burned out on the day-to-day radio. I loved the time we were on the air, but you got to do a lot of stuff, wear a lot of hats. And so I ended up going over there with him about 6 years ago. Rec Tech Grills is the name of the place. And
was that 6 already? 6
well,
years?
I've been there 6 years. Wow. Yeah, over 6.
Because I remember, Yeah,
I've been there over 6. But what I wanted to keep, stay involved with sports. I knew I wanted to do that. So I continued to write my column. I help WJAC with their Masters coverage still. Yes. I still do that. And then WJBF, fortunately, still invited me to do the high school football broadcast. So I stay as involved as I can and still love it. But day to day, I'm over there. But like I said, they've been awesome too because, they allow me to go do Masters Week. They allow me to, I'm here right now. So I love it. So I stay involved with it. I go some of these years, I'm thinking, if I don't, what would I do if I don't do this? Because I got to keep up with the stats. Yeah. And how many backs had 1,000 in Columbia County this year? Look at all the backs. Somebody needs to focus on that. Yeah. So, and the fact that you're doing it is all man, you're blowing it out of the water. So, but that was my journey, and where we are today. I'm still enjoy covering the games.
I could tell a million stories like this, but I remember a few years ago, probably 2015 or 16, and you emailed me and you said, hey, Don Coleman and Darius Williams. Darius Williams of Butler and Josie are either freshmen or sophomores, and probably freshmen in junior college, and they're tearing it up. And just let me write something and you put it on your site. I just got to get it out.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
sent me this huge thing and it was so great and they loved it. Everybody around the community loved it because when do you see an article about a couple JUCO guys?
Well, and back then I was limited because I was doing only Columbia County, and I'm like, God, this is such a good story. Nobody knows what these guys are doing. In my mind, I'm thinking I've got to get it out there so they can see it, and because it is neat, and we do have guys that do that, and sometimes. The funny thing is that type of story is the first thing I ever did. Ward Clayton used to be the sports editor of the Augusta Chronicle. He's moved on to really big things with the PGA Tour, and Ward was phenomenal. And out of the blue, when I started with GAC, Ward called me and said, hey, I know I hear you talking recruiting a lot. We'd like to do a little something. But what they wanted me to do was come in once a week, and I actually drove down and did it like it is today. You can just do it wherever. Yeah. I drove to the Augusta Chronicle once a week,
etched it in stone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And I actually did. What I did was all the local players. I would go through newspapers. Back then, it wasn't a whole lot of internet. It was relatively new, and I would go through and find out everything. I'd call sports information directors, like, okay, what did Todd Stanford do or whoever? Mm-hmm. And I would do an update. Former Lakeside standout did this. Former Butler standout did this. And we did a little column. So that was kind of what I started doing anyway. And I love focusing on those guys once they leave. Like, to me, it's cool to flip on a TV and watch Liam Welch this weekend put up 42 on Florida in the first half. I had to put something on Facebook. I'm like, I got to get this out there,
Yeah,
so,
it's great.
So it's still fun,
It's so interesting that there's a story like that almost literally every day. It just so happens that last night, Buffalo beat North Texas in basketball, 69-66. You got Jamie Quarles, longtime Augusta University player and assistant coach, coaching for Buffalo, one of the best mid-major programs in the country. They win. They beat on the other side, Mardrez McBride out of Butler. He was a star in the team's Cinderella type NCAA tournament win last year, and he had 17 points in defeat last night. So it's almost like every day you could find. You found it Saturday with, like you said, Liam Welch for Samford, setting records against Florida.
Yeah, he's had a phenomenal run in college, but I love the Buffalo North Texas story. The reason why is because Jamie makes me feel a little bit young because I still look at him as really young. But I actually used to play back when I was still playing pickup ball at the Y. Jamie was playing coming up through Richmond. So he makes me feel a little bit young, even though I'm very, very old.
Yes. Speaking of the Y and your history, before we get on to the other stuff, that's where I met you.
Yep.
I talked last week about how I was like kind of a ball boy of types for Augusta College when Buck Harris and Keenan Mann played. They were the guests last week. Well, Ashley was the star player at Lakeside when I first basically went to my first high school games. I was going to be at Lakeside in a few years, middle schooler at the time, and I'd go watch Ashley, who's my favorite player, and then I'd go to the YMCA, and I didn't know what downs were or how you get in a game or anything like that. And I would get downs. Once I figured that out, I would get downs. And then all the older guys would say, you can't play. I don't care if you have downs or not. And then Ashley would say, no, let him play. And he'd put me on his team and kind of take care of me a little bit. So that's where we met. And
that's awesome that you say that too, because I have a real similar, my brother-in-law at the time played at Evans. Jamie Williams.
He used to shoot from behind half court at the Y.
The biggest ball. So now I look back and I'm like, God, I wish I was never on his teams. But he either would be getting in fights or shooting bad shots. But the one thing Jamie always did for me, even though if he knew it was going to hurt his team, because back then it would be packed at Bernie Ward or Warren Road, or we'd go out to Fort Gordon and play. And if you lost, it might be a while before you got to play again. But one thing Jamie always did when I was 11, 12, 13, he would always pick me on his team. So that's how I met Marcus Reynolds and Keith Reynolds and Dino Yarbrough, some of these incredible players, from way back. That's how I got, I knew, to me, they were the stars. I was like, I'd go to the gym and be like, oh, wow, I get to play with them today. And so it's funny you say that, because it was the same situation with me. And I really think that helped me as a player. I wasn't, when I would go play against guys in high school, I had been playing since I was 11 and 12 and 13 against these really good players that were either in college or out of college. So I wasn't overwhelmed by the high school game at all, the way some ninth graders might have been, or 10th graders or whatever.
Yeah, those were your heroes. You guys, you and Keenan and Chuck were my heroes. I remember, like I said, the first high school games I go to are Lakeside. And the reason why I went, we were at I think football practice, and Mel Springs was telling me about how Ashley had 28 and Jamie had 30, but Chuck had 32 or something,
Yeah.
and Richmond barely beat Lakeside, and it was the greatest game ever. I go to the repeat,
No,
the rematch.
Don't tell me about the next
Chuck
game.
had a good game that game.
Actually, what happened? So Jamie had 30, I had 28, and Chuck only had 25 or 27.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't do it. But
I'm sure Jamie told him.
Jamie, oh my God, did he tell him? And we had gotten to know Chuck a little bit playing summer ball and stuff. That was kind of the first taste of summer ball. We played in a men's league, and it was like an Augusta All-Star team. Well, Chuck was traveling around, so he didn't play with us much, but we knew him from that, and the boys club, and of course Jamie had to let him know. And it's so funny because we go to Richmond. We didn't beat them, but we had no business being close.
It was very close. It was a moral victory.
It was a moral victory, and we had beat him, outscored him. So the next time we play, we go to Richmond. I had 2 games my senior year I didn't score double figures, at Richmond, at North Augusta. I had the worst game I've ever had. I think I had 6 points, 7 points, 5 points, something. But Chuck played 3 quarters. Didn't play before.
43, right?
He had 41 points and 7 dunks.
Yeah.
And he didn't say a word.
Yeah.
He let that do the talking. Jamie rubbed it in. He's like, "All right, I'll show you." Chuck was phenomenal.
Such a great player. I said last week that Chuck Graham and Keenan Mann are the best players to ever come through here. Keenan, I'm probably a little biased there. Such a close friend of mine, but man, Chuck, what a player.
They were, the funny thing with Keenan, I'd met Keenan doing the Gerald White basketball tournament camps. And I remember thinking, man, Keenan's pretty good, but when you thought Richmond, you thought of Chuck. Until the senior year, when they were seniors, I grabbed the box scores to see what Chuck did. And the first game of the season, I'll never forget. I forget the point total. He either had, I want to say 38.
Against Josie.
The first game. But I remember grabbing the box score to see what Chuck did, and Chuck had like 17. I went, 38, Keenan Mann. And that's when he really started to take off. Before he was a little more raw, but man, they were fun to watch. And Chuck, I still think, there are a lot of players that have played around here. I do think Chuck's the most underrated player because there's some people that don't talk about him when they talk about the great players. They talk about
Ricky Moore.
Look,
William
Chuck
Avery
was the show in town that those 2 years. Really his sophomore year too, but his leaping ability was unreal.
For sure. Yeah, Keenan still tells a story about that 38-point game, and the Augusta Chronicle asked Coach Brock after the game, how, were you surprised about Keenan Mann's output? And Coach Brock said, no, that's exactly what I expected. And Keenan said that kind of inspired him to be the player that his coach expected greatness from him.
That's all. Well, I remember it to this day too, myself. So that's pretty awesome. Yep.
Okay, so we're talking about when we were kids. When I was a kid, other than you guys, looking up to you guys, the other central figure in my life was Dick Vitale.
Yeah.
Primetime player, diaper dandy. If Dick Vitale was talking about you, you were something. Mm-hmm. And he would always talk about, I don't know if the young people today, who are watching know what a cupcake is.
Yeah.
He'd talk about playing cupcakes. And, those are early in the season when you play teams that you're going to beat. That used to be so common. I feel like it's changing in a major way. And so I'm calling these final 2 weeks in November, as we move into high school basketball talk, no cupcakes in November. It's striking to me the level of competition that these teams are taking on. So we'll go through that a little bit. I was at Hoopin in Middle Georgia at Jones County in Gray, Georgia, hosted by Buck Harris, another Augusta basketball legend. He's the head coach at Jones County. Well, there was 4 games, 4 boys games, some girls games. The matchups were great. So number 9, Warner Robins, started off with a monster victory over Greenbrier, beat them 71-31. They've got some excellent guards. It's kind of noteworthy because they'll be playing Jones County tonight, who also has some excellent guards. And so, that'll be a great matchup. We'll see how Bucks guys handle that. But as we move more towards the teams with local, local ties, Grovetown, 6 guys between 6'5" and 6'9". They beat Veterans 62-51. And a few things. It was my first time seeing Franquan Sherman in person. I've seen the highlights over the years. Sherman had 19 points. He's a 6'6" transfer from Lincoln County. And after the game, Darren Douglas, head coach at Grovetown, had a lot of things to say. One of the things he was upset, not upset, but he wanted it to be known that he thinks it's pretty ridiculous that Franquan Sherman, who's already scored 1,000 points in high school at Lincoln County in 2 seasons, was left off the Augusta Chronicle's terrific 10 list. Now we could go on and on about, people being upset about things like that, but So he talks a little bit about Franquan Sherman, and then he talks about the unselfishness of the team and the fact that that's baked into their program. So first, we're going to look at 3 third-quarter plays from Grovetown that I think just encapsulates what that team's all about. Very unselfish plays, great teamwork. We're going to look at that first, and then we're going to cut from there to the interview with Coach Darren Douglas after the win against Veterans. See that?
Like, Darion's a great passer. Jose Rodriguez is a great passer, but I think just we practice it so much that it's kind of just gotten everybody's bloodstream to kind of drive it, kick it, swing it. Like, that's our game. We call it our game, like drive, kick, swing. When we do that, like, good things happen for us. He's next level, you know what I mean? Like, his basketball IQ, that was kind of a thing, like, you kind of always worry, like, there's a guy that's already got 1,000 points in high school, which is crazy, a little segue. How does he not in a terrific 10 or whatever that is? Like, this guy's not in it. But, he shares it just like everybody else. He doesn't, like, that's the most fun thing about coaching him. Like, he doesn't put it on like people should, guys of that stature kind of these days, they got a whole bunch of people bowing down and kind of telling them how great they are, and he just shows up every day, wants to improves every day, and fit the team like a glove. Yeah, he's been here since the summer, though, and he kind of immersed himself in what we do. Kids still improve, but the thing that he has that most kids from our area don't have is, like, he just plays incredibly hard. And when you play incredibly hard like that, like, it's easier to fit in than if you're playing cool and trying to fit in. Like, you play hard, I mean, it's nothing to fit in like that.
Okay, so before we go on to, I know you've been very familiar with the Grovetown squad. Have you gotten a chance to see them over the past couple years?
Oh yeah, for sure. And the one thing you're right. They got Sherman coming in this year. They have they're long and athletic with Ferguson and with Freeman and Reed. They got some players. The one thing I wonder about this year's team, because I do think they, it's funny how things have flipped. Columbia County's really good in basketball now. Lakeside and Greenbrier will be a little bit down this year, and Evans will be down from what they have been. But the one team that's up is Grovetown. But the one thing I wonder about with them, and you might know more than me this year, is obviously they've lost some really good talent over the last 2 seasons. But maybe not the best player of the guys they've lost, but the one that I think the biggest impact is point guard play from Julius Brown. Yeah. So that's the question I have is, are they going to have that play? And keep in mind, at one point, not only did they have Freeman and Ferguson and Reed and Sherman, but at one point they had Tillman there.
Yes.
Amari Tillman, who is phenomenal. Westside had 32 at Jones County, because Westside is really, really good this year too. So I wonder who's going to step up and play, because Brown had the ball in his hand so much for them. That's the one question mark I have. But I do, obviously, they're a loaded team, and they're just going to beat most teams just because of that length and athleticism, I think.
You hit the nail on the head, in my opinion. Julius Brown, not only a very good point guard, but a great shooter. Mm-hmm. So he's going to keep defenses honest. And then you talk about Amari Tillman 2 seasons ago. He's a great shooter. And that is what this team, that's the question mark with this team. Are they going to be able to make enough shots? Like they, I would say, pretty much dominated veterans, but they won 62-51 because they're not the kind of team that's going to put a bunch of points on the board. Now, they're going to defend like crazy. They're going to share the ball like crazy. But if a team packs it in, can they score points? Yeah. And that's kind of...
They need a shooter. I mean, if you stuck an Andrew Black from Greenbrier or Tillman or one of those guys on that team, then look out. This is a state championship contender. And they still may be.
Sure. Because
they are so athletic. They're well coached. They get after it. And they have a lot of depth from one game to another. You have no clue who's going to be their dominant guy, really, I think. So they're certainly one of the teams to watch. Fortunately, in our area, you look at last year with, we had, not only did we have a state champion in Cross Creek, and then, of course, the girls' side a couple, but we had a lot of other really good teams. We mentioned Westside, and I think it's going to be a fun year to watch who out of that group becomes the best team. Westside could be that team. I don't know.
That's right, and we'll get to them in a second. It's interesting. We're talking about Grovetown.
Yeah.
A dozen teams, 6 boys, 6 girls. And then that doesn't even count. That's just on the Georgia side. Then you add North Augusta's boys, and then Augusta Christian's boys are state title contenders. That's how many teams are ranked in the top 10 preseason, and Grovetown's not even one of them.
Yeah.
So we're loaded here in the area.
You mentioned Augusta Christian. I absolutely love their young guard, Crawford. I think he's Elijah Crawford, sophomore, and he's there's some players that are just different, and things have changed again with that. It used to be if a kid played at a private school, some of the coaches would say, well, yeah, but it's against that competition. Well, these days during the summer, they're playing everybody. That kid is a player, and he would be a star on any team in this area, in my opinion.
No doubt about it. Now, so we moved from Grovetown. The Cross Creek girls, defending state champions, took on Southwest DeKalb, who reached the Final Four of Class 5A. Cross Creek's a Class 3A team. They had a tough game against Southwest DeKalb and won 52-45. We talked about Grovetown's unselfishness. Well, the same thing carried Cross Creek as with just a couple minutes to go, Southwest DeKalb ties it at 43, and Cross Creek comes storming back behind Michaela Bogans, who I think might be the best girls player in the entire area, and that's saying a lot. We've got girls.
She's only a sophomore.
She's
right?
a sophomore. Yeah. We've got girls like Kiana Curtis and Keishana Brown from Josie, Kiana Curtis from Grovetown, committing to Division I schools as we speak. And so, maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think Bogans is outstanding. And right after the game got tied up, she led a couple fast breaks that led to easy layups for Aaron Martin, and the Lady Razorbacks pulled away. We're going to show that clip, and then we're going to also show what Cross Creek head coach Kim Schlein said in a preseason interview about what is so important for the team. What is the focus of the team, both last year during the state championship run and this season.
had 3 things that we worked on every game: run the floor, crash the boards, control the ball. That was it. That was 3 things. That was it.
Yeah.
That's what you do every game. Yeah, Michaela is got a beautiful game. I mean, you know, the thing right now is making sure we control the floor, control the ball. And, you know, with her, the way she likes to go, she's a go-getter. I mean, sometimes we got to rein it in a little bit, slow down, let's get this thing, but she can go.
Yeah.
She can shoot, she can make things happen, you know, and we got some nice support staff to go with her, so it's exciting.
So Coach Slime mentioned there, crashing the boards, running the court, and taking care of the ball being the 3 things. Well, if I were to grade the team in the first game of the season against a state championship type contender, A+ on crashing the boards and pushing the tempo. They didn't take care of the ball very well. Michaela Bogans actually had a slew of turnovers, but I like the fact that she's trying to make things happen. And when she turns the ball over, it's usually trying to create for her teammates. She's a consummate point guard. She's just a sophomore. She's going to learn. That team's going to learn. They lost one of the best girls players to ever come through here, Jordan Dorsey, who's at North Carolina A&T now. So they're finding their way with a great win in the first game of the season.
Yeah, and you mentioned Bogans, the point guard. Some people just look a little different on the floor. She's a step ahead of everybody. And, you know, the girls' game I've gotten a chance to see this year, another really impressive point guard is Tiffany Barrow from over at Greenbrier.
Trinity
Barrow, excuse me. Trinity Barrow. And obviously they have the big player inside that's awfully good, you know, Caitlin Staley. But Barrow is the difference maker on that team. And she is just a couple of steps ahead of everybody. And she can shoot it. She can handle it, and really good. That Greenbrier team, and I think they're ranked pretty high preseason. I think they're number 3 in
number
one bowl.
4 in Class 5A.
Yeah. And they were impressive. They've got a shooter, I think, that was out last year with an injury back that can really shoot it. They've got athletes. They've got like 3 different Staleys on the team that are the 2 twins that are athletic. But like I said, Barrow is what makes that team go. And then they also happen to have a 6'4" really talented player inside too, in Staley.
She's dominant. Caitlin Staley has several Division I offers. She, you know, I love Kiana Curtis as a player, as a person. Her father, Kenny, old friend of mine. Caitlin Staley outplayed Kiana Curtis in a game early last year, and that's when it was clear to me, like, wow, this girl's a player.
She's going to get a ton. She's already got Memphis and a few big schools. I think College of Charleston. That's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, when she's got the. You know, you can't teach 6'4", and you know that she's already. I don't know if she's quite that. She might be 6'3", but she's also got a big athletic body. It's not big like she's overweight. It's a big athletic body, and she can run the floor. I was really impressed, and I knew they were good, but I knew about her. But I was really impressed with the point guard. I think Barrow is a solid player for them.
You're right. Yeah, you know, I'm going on and on about Michaela Bogans. You put Trinity Barrow on that Cross Creek team, and they don't take a step back.
Yeah, I do. I think, you know, and again, she's a little bit older, but the one thing, you know, sometimes you have those really good point guards, and that's what they do. They run the team. But like Julius Brown for Grovetown's boys, Barrow can really shoot it too. And that's the difference for Greenbrier. They've got 3 players that can knock down the 3, and then you throw the 6'4" player inside. You know, they're going to be scary for most teams they play in that region.
I'm not sure if the shooter you were trying to recall is Brooklyn Begley.
It is.
Or not,
it is.
She's
it
a
is.
great shooter.
It's Brooklyn, and I knew she was coming off an injury, but she looked great the other night. We went to you know, my daughter cheers there, so we went to their midnight madness or whatever they're calling it, and she stood out to me. Matter of fact, I don't know that she, other than Andrew Black, I don't know that she's not the best shooter on the boys or the girls. She can really shoot it. She stood out, and then when we saw them play Lakeside, you know, they pressed early. It was a pretty dominant performance. Lakeside's a little bit down, but you know, she can shoot it. She's got a pretty quick release, and then they're a good squad. They're, you know, usually in girls basketball, it's Richmond County, and there's so many good teams down there. But I think Greenbrier is one that can compete with anybody in the area on a given night.
Totally agree. Now, you mentioned Westside earlier. We're going to cut in a second to, it was just a fun game between Westside and Peach County. Westside number 3 in Class 2A beat Peach County number 7 in Class 3A, 83-77. Amari Tillman for Westside, a junior, scored 32 points. Not only is he drilling threes left and right, he's dunking the ball left and right. I didn't see that coming from Amari. Tamarius Mathens for Peach County responded with 33. It was a wild game. It was one of those games where, you've got a trap on in the backcourt off of like a defensive rebound. We're not pressing, but we're pressing, and so that led to a lot of leak outs and some of the fun finishes that we saw. So we'll cut to that in a second. Then I've got a question for you on the other side of these highlights. Okay, Ashley, I think I caught you referring to this a second ago, but I want to ask you directly. Do you think Westside is the most likely team to earn a state title this year like Cross Creek's boys and girls and Josie's girls did last year?
I do. I think so. I think they have the components and the parts. Tillman coming over tips him overboard, and especially as improved as he is. I mean, he was good as a freshman. You could tell he was going to be a player, but his development, his body and stuff like that, and his athleticism just is different now than it was. And I think before he was more just a shooter, and I think now he's a really good player. I saw him one of the putbacks. I think it was a clip you had where he had a crazy putback, and I'm like, wow. So I think you throw him with what they already had, and also the experience they gained last year. And the great thing about this area, Richmond County, Columbia County, both last year for them, when you're playing, Evans had a really good team. Grovetown's got a really good team. And even Greenbrier would give you fits last year, so well coached. And then you throw in all the Richmond County schools and how athletic, Laney and all these different schools are. You're playing state playoff games almost every game. And I think that kind of experience is so invaluable to a team like Westside. So I do think they could be the team that takes that next step. I wouldn't be surprised to see a really, really deep run for them, which is awesome to see. They've had some years. When Booker was there, they were pretty good, Frank Booker, and obviously you can go back to Ricky and William, and then before that, the Reynolds brothers. I mean, they've had their stretches, so it's good to. It's almost like when Michigan or somebody's good in football, you're like, college football's better when they're good. I think the area is better when they're good.
I do too.
Yeah.
Kalon Hudson, Jalix Ewing, a couple juniors to go along
Hudson
with
is
Tillman
the one.
the junior.
And Hudson, the good thing about him, he was so well regarded coming up as a freshman, and you're like, oh, that kid's going to be special. But he doesn't seem to be bothered by the fact that he's got to share some of the limelight. He's not just the guy now. They've got Tillman and they've got some other players. And I think that, that shows a little maturity and shows that maybe they are ready to make that run. Yep.
He's a neat guy. He's also a good baseball player.
Yep.
So speaking of, Westside, the other team, if I were to counter that and say, watch out for, it would be Butler.
Yeah.
These guys are stacked. They played Jones County in the nightcap. We got out of there by about midnight. Things run behind in those all-day basketball events. And so you got Butler, coached by Cervantes Body, against Jones County, coached by Buck Harris, two guys who have been battling for years now, going on a decade.
Yeah.
Coach Body wanted it bad. When Jones County got up 14-2, Body cleared the bench, brought in a bunch of young guys, and those guys responded. So you have Kendrell Glanton's a senior. He scored 15 points. He was with all these young guys, Marcus Scurry, a freshman, Willie Taylor, a sophomore, and Kylan Clark, another sophomore. And those guys went on a 17-0 run. Next thing you know, after being down 21-8, they're up 25-21. And from that point on, Ashley, things just slowed to a grind. It took on a playoff atmosphere. You mentioned these games being playoff type games. First day of the season, we're in a playoff game. And these guys, the buckets were hard to come by. Jones County's very good guards, Jalen Sanford and Chaden Stone, kind of carried Jones County through that time period. And then Kadar Bodie on the other side for Butler, 6'4" senior guard, one of the most talented players we have. He made shots on that end, and it was just kind of grinding. And you could tell like either one of these main players or leaders is going to carry the team over the top, or somebody out of the blue is going to make some shots. Well, who was it but Buck Harris's son, Dathan Harris, to make the big three to put Jones County up 3 late. And then a young man named Matthew Wald, who I did not know coming in, but he is the hardest playing. He's a Buck Harris special.
Yeah.
You know, like the kind of guy that Buck's going to have on his team. And he blocked shots, and he made threes, and he got an and one, and he carried them over the top. But that was, I saw Buck on the way out. He had lost his voice, and I said, felt like the playoffs, Buck. And he said, it sure did. And that's what we'll come back to. You mentioned it earlier. I mentioned it there. Buck mentioned it, the playoffs. But before we get into playoff football, I just want to run down. I got to get my notes here. I want to run down this No Cupcake November schedule. So I mentioned 12 area teams being ranked. Well, number 4 in 2A Butler. Yet in November, we'll play against Grovetown. We talked about them earlier. They'll play Tuesday, Thanksgiving week. Then they'll play number 6 Warren County at the 100 Black Men Classic on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. Warren County's got a great player, Lorenzo Johnson. He's a college player in the making. Then they'll play defending state champions Cross Creek on November 30th. And to bleed into December a little bit, on Saturday the 4th, they'll take on Columbia, which is ranked number 2 in Class 2A. Butler's 4, Westside's 3. Playoff basketball.
It's what it's all about. And the one thing that stood out to me too is some of these coaches, Buck Harris and Bodie over at Butler, 2 really good coaches, and they get the most out of their players, and they do always seem to have those jack of all trade guys. And I think that's just from the coaching. But it's fun to see. And you're right. Are there going to be some blowouts here and there? Yes, but for the most part, when these teams go at it, it's going to be great games. So if you're looking to find basketball, almost any Tuesday, Friday, or Saturday, you're going to be able to find some good games.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
Now, number 3 Westside, they're taking on number 9 from Class 6A, Evans, Friday night. What a battle that should be. They've got Jones County in the 100 Black Men Classic the day after Thanksgiving at Augusta University. And then they play Augusta Christian. You mentioned it earlier. Augusta Christian's schedule.
They're loaded, man. They are loaded.
When it comes to people saying, oh, they don't play anybody, check out Augusta Christian. They're going to play Grovetown Friday. They're going to play Jones County Tuesday. They're going to go to the Holiday Hoopsgiving tournament the 2 days after Thanksgiving. That has been called one of the top 5 tournaments in the country. And then they're going to finish off with number 3 Westside on the last day of the month. I mean, what a schedule. I'll touch on a girl, Cross Creek and Josie's girls, 2 defending state champions, are playing each other this Friday night. Yeah. And then you mentioned Greenbrier's girls. We mentioned them being number 4 in Class 5A. I got to find that one. They are playing Butler, defending region champions. They'll play Tuesday. They're playing Putnam County, a state playoff team that Saturday in the 100 Black Men Classic at Christenberry Fieldhouse. And then they play defending state champion Josie on the last day of the month. And I think I've kind of given the point there. On the way,
good games.
On the way out of Jones County, and this will get us into football. On the way out of Jones County, I talked to Jerry Hunter, the Westside coach, and I said, good game, coach. And he kind of shook his head because there's about 1 million turnovers and they're up at the end and they're fouling for some reason, keeping Peach County in the game. He said, we got to learn some stuff, but if we do, we can be real good. And I said, man, you got a tough schedule. And he said, we finished with the playoffs last year and we're beginning with the playoffs this year.
Yep.
So that's that same thing we've been talking about. But speaking of playoffs, let's talk football. As the color commentator and sometimes play-by-play announcer on the WJBF Game Night Live, 12 weeks every year for going on, 12 years now?
This is I think 11th for Game Night Live, 11th or 12th, right? You're right in there. And then before that, we did them for, matter of fact, at one point there was a company out of Atlanta that came down and like rented us out to do the game. So I've done them. But matter of fact, one night we did a game doing theirs. Theirs were tape delayed, and we were at Cross Creek Glen Hills. It was probably one of the worst played games.
I was going to say
there were 50-something penalties. It was brutal, and we found out like late in the game that something happened in the recording. We had the video but no audio. We had to sit in the van under the bleachers and redo the game.
Oh my goodness!
Brutal. But so if we get through that, anything else is fine. But no, it was this year was a fun year. There were a lot of great finishes on Game Night Live. We got lucky.
Let's talk about some good memories. But first, when it comes to the playoffs, let me run this one by you. Westminster is going to play for the state championship in 8-man football, GISA. That'll be if they are able to win. Now, they're the underdog against Windsor. If they're able to win, that'll be 2 championships in 3 seasons. So they've gone all the way. We're going to have a story about that on the AUG B-Ball newsletter. They've gone all the way to the championship game. In my opinion, the question's for you, but how does this hit you? I'd say Silver Bluff and maybe Thompson have a chance to do a similar thing. And then the 2 very cool stories, in my opinion, are Westside and Evans. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think Silver Bluff has the best chance. When you look at what they did this year, you want to talk Travion Dunbar because he's so great, and their sophomore running back who's outstanding. And you look and you see they've also got a good quarterback, Malik Williams. They, scored over 40 a game. But you got to look at the defense. They just don't give up points. And the first game of the year was a wake up for everybody in the state a little bit, because I thought South Aiken was going to be really down. And when I saw they beat them 40-0, South Aiken's a quad A school, Silver Bluff a small school. When they beat them 40-0, I thought, okay, well, South Aiken's down. But then South Aiken didn't lose again until the playoffs. And then I thought, wow. And then getting a chance to see Silver Bluff against Fox Creek, and they just dominated, and they're just a machine. I think that D'Angelo Bryant over there has got a squad that can go all the way. I think they're easily the number one team in terms of with the best chance to win the state title. And I do think Thompson as well.
I know they struggled with Jackson.
I was going to say it threw me for a loop that they struggled, but that is happening more and more. There's more parity than there used to be. It used to be you could almost pick who's going to win every game in high school football. You could pick who was going to be, make deep runs in the state. That's changed. There's more athletes, more kids are going to camps and no workout regimens and things like that. So I still think Thompson's got a really good chance. And the reason why is because they've got really three dynamic players on offense. Obviously, Tay Martin gets a lot of attention, three, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons coming into this year. You add Jontavius Curry, who is the game breaker in the area, in my opinion. And then Jordan Lane's not bad either. He can fly. But what I think the difference is, Thompson's always had playmakers. Their defense is really good. And, Quinshawn Hurst is the one I love the most, the transfer from Washington Wilkes. He is phenomenal, but they've got several guys on that defense that can play. So, yeah, they struggled in the first round, but I still think of the teams on the Georgia side, probably have the best chance to make a deep run.
I can't say enough. You mentioned, Coach Bryant.
D'Angelo Bryant.
D'Angelo Bryant at Silver Bluff. Can't say enough about him. And goodness, now I'm nervous on camera. Coach from Youngblood, Coach Michael Youngblood. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Those two guys, so impressed with those two guys.
Absolutely. And what's great about it, I love to see, is their former players coming back. Michael Youngblood was a phenomenal player at Burke County and was even better in the college ranks at Georgia Southern. He played on a state title team at Burke County in '97 and was a 4-year starter at Georgia Southern and phenomenal. And D'Angelo Bryant was a phenomenal player on those great Silver Bluff teams when he was in school and a state champion. So those guys coming back, in Bryant's case to his alma mater, Youngblood's case, to now he's playing against his alma mater, but still coming to the area, I think is great. And then you look at the other situation. Look, Westside and Evans both have first-year head coaches. Lee Hutto took over. Both took over pretty good teams. But what Westside's done this year, and again, it's another thing where, and he should. Caleb Hutchinson gets a lot of attention, as he should. Phenomenal, one of the best all-around players in the area. And the running back Zay Green gets a lot of attention. But when I went and watched them play, what blew me away, I don't know that I saw a better defensive front 4 or 5, because they went to 5 defensive linemen in that game against Jefferson County that we did. That's what blew me away. They're not star names that you hear all the time. They're not 5- and 4-star recruits, but nobody can run on them. They were impressive.
To see a team push around Jefferson County just blew my mind. At the beginning, Jefferson County seemed to have the upper hand, but man, that stopped quick towards the end of the first half.
They had a tough draw. Vitale is a great program, and playing their first playoff game at home. They've had a banged up quarterback. What Westside's done this year is great to see, and I love seeing that they're getting some support from their fan base, and because there are a lot of Westside alum that are here that they're waiting, dying for this, and then at Evans, they're a team that has surprised me a little bit. They didn't have a brutally tough schedule, so I knew they'd win games, but what they did, beating Houston County, was impressive, and to hold Houston County to 10 points, because I thought Evans could score with people. They've got Joe Hampton, who can fly, Caleb Jackson, and, I know he's may not start in the next game, I guess, but Caleb Jackson at quarterback, and they've got athletic receivers, Dorsey transferring in. But what surprised me is I thought Evans would be weak on defense, and as the years, give Barrett Davis credit, the first-year head coach, as the year has gone on, their defense has really gotten better. And, again, holding Houston County to down to 10 points was impressive.
Really was. We're going to wrap things up, but I'll say a couple things, some memories from the season. Get your take on this. Quinshawn Hurst, an electric defender, you mentioned him, and it just frames things for me that when we watched Caleb Hutchison for Westside against Jefferson County and that what do you call it, single wing, just run it down your throat. They move him to linebacker and he makes 14 tackles. He was a terror on that defensive side. And by the way, on the other side, he's catching passes and stuff. But I would say, and this is Quinchon Hurst is probably the best linebacker in town, but maybe Caleb Hutchison's actually the best linebacker in town.
He might be the best player on the defensive side. Yeah, I agree. He probably is right now. Because like you said, not only did he have 14 tackles, not only have an interception, not only did he recover a fumble, he was around the ball. He caught every completion they had on offense. Yeah. They completed 4 passes for 58 yards, all to him. And really the game changed on the one big deep pass play. Brian Green was able to throw it up, and Hutchison made a great play on the ball, and that changed the whole complexion of that game. And really, they carried that over into the playoffs. So it's great to see. I mean, Coastal Carolina's getting a heck of a football player because I do think if he were about 3 inches taller, he wouldn't return their calls. Yeah. I think he would be getting Power 5, big-time Power 5 offers. So I love him. I think Hurst is great. There's some other great players. We've got some great running backs. I know that on the South Carolina side, we mentioned Travion Dunbar at Silver Bluff, who may be the best, but also you've got Durant over at McCormick, the younger brother of Mateo Durant, who is a junior who had
Durant. Dunbar's a sophomore, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say in the first round of the playoff, they got knocked out in the second round, but in the first round, he had 330 yards rushing and 6 touchdowns. And then I tell you another one, Zach Blackwell at Augusta Christian. Yeah. You were there when we did their playoff game. They got knocked out in the second round, but Blackwell this year, over 2,000 yards rushing for his career, over 5,000. He plays both sides of the ball. So we've got some good players in this area to follow for sure.
There's a freshman at South Aiken. I still haven't connected with him. I can't recall his name, but he's putting up numbers. And I think we'll end it. I want to mention Augusta University basketball on the way out. We have a hard stop in 3 minutes. But before we go, you're talking about these, I always call them video game numbers.
Yeah.
The statistics that these guys, Zach Blackwell and Travion Dunbar and John Tavis Curry and these guys put up. Well, let's end it. And I'll mention Augusta University on the way out, but video game numbers, give us some on, I think, the best quarterback to ever come through here, Brooks Pangle, and probably by the time he's done, the best wide receiver to maybe ever come through here. You know better than me. So tell me about those two guys from Greenbrier.
Well, statistically, there's no argument. I mean, Malik Leverett as a junior this year caught 77 passes, by far the most of any receiver ever in the CSRA. And then you look at Brooks Pangle. He threw 31 touchdowns last year with 10 picks. This year, only 21 touchdowns, but only 1 pick.
It was a fluke pick.
It was, but I mean, 21 TDs, 1 pick. He also showed he can run the ball this year, especially in their last game of the regular season. He had an 84-yard touchdown, but throwing for almost 6,000 yards in his 2 seasons as a starter is just incredible. And he's got one D1 offer at Jacksonville State. He's a good student, so he's got a lot of schools looking at him. I think somebody could get a steal. It could be almost that somebody compared him to Bennett at Georgia, to where he ends up walking on somewhere, and he could. And I think Brooke, and he's a great kid. And then Malik, those two at Greenbrier, and it's people saying, "Well, you giving Greenbrier attention." If one of your guys catches 77 passes, we'll talk about it. I mean, Malik Leverett was unbelievable this year.
We could do a whole show about people complaining about who gets attention.
Yeah.
When that comment came over social media about you, why are you talking about Greenbrier when you could be talking about Evans? It was funny because I shared it, so the comment also kind of comes at me. Well, at the moment, I was at Alcovey High School about to cover the Evans game. So, you can't win.
You can't. It's fun, though.
Yeah, for sure. Now, and after I touch on Augusta University, we'll play it out with an interview with Brooks Pangle after a scrimmage game against Westside before the first game of the season. And you mentioned his character, the good person that he is. He was just, if you're watching, if you stay till the very end of the episode, watch how his face lights up when he talks about his center and how he's never given him a bad snap. And his, just everybody. Maddox Smith, who couldn't play this year because he blew out his knee. Malik Leverett, Davin Driscoll. This is a guy, the ultimate teammate, the ultimate leader. Now, on the way out, Augusta University, I think this team has the potential to be, they're already are starting to look as good as the team that won the Peach Belt Championship 2 or 3 years ago when Dean Williams was a senior. They're absolutely loaded. The thing that really makes me say that is we have a bunch of starters coming off the bench. It's a team with 9 or 10 starter type players. And we'll just give a quick on the way. I'll point you to I'll point you to AugustaSportsReport.com. That's our newsletter. I just did a big thing on the 2-0 start for the Jaguars. We're going to play a quick video clip of Jaquez Kirby and a play that he makes getting back on defense. And this is a guy who's new to the team. He's a Murray State transfer, and he's just one of 9 or 10 guys who could be starting on, I would say, any Peach Belt team. This team's going to be special. Come out, when will it be? November 23rd at home, Christenberry Fieldhouse. That's a Tuesday night. We're taking on Benedict in the home opener. Come out and check that out. You won't be sorry. And so we'll play that clip from Jaquez. And we'll send you out with Brooks Pangle, just, the epitome of what a young high school athlete should strive for when it comes to his talent and his character. Thank you for being with us. AugustaSportsReport.com. You can find me at AUGBball on social media. Ashley, should we say AB Sportsline?
At AB Sportsline on Instagram, and on Facebook, just Ashley Brown. And always try. And of course, the column each week in the Augusta Press. Yeah,
it's what, $5 a month, I think.
Yeah, $5 a month, and you can cancel anytime. So if you're unhappy with it, but yeah, I do a weekly sports report. This week, my column is going to be kind of a capsule of a lot of the playoff games in the area. So
yeah. Okay, thanks for being with us.
Well, first off, anytime I get a chance to speak on platform, I want to give glory to God, because without Him, none of this would be possible. We wouldn't even be able to be out here. And one guy I really want to shout out, so my center, Jaden Raymond, he has almost never given me a bad snap before, and a lot of quarterbacks don't have that, but he has given me almost perfect snaps and goes pretty much unnoticed from stuff like this. But I would love to give that guy a shout out. Jaden Raymond is the name of that.
You ran it well last year. You're really running it well. What's going on with that?
Starting to pick it up a little bit. I think last year, my backup quarterback, Wilson Dowling, he's right there. He was a freshman last year. And this year he's a sophomore. He's improved a ton. They have a lot more faith in him coming in, so they're willing to let me do a little bit more, not risky things, but a little bit, be able to get down the field more and use my legs more often.
Those are some nice shoes.
Yes, sir.
What kind of shoes are those?
These are Nikes. My dad helped me order them. I got custom. So on the top of them it says AO1. That stands for Audience of One, because I'm only really out here playing for one person, and that's Jesus Christ. And then it's got my number on the back.
Very nice, very nice. So say that one more time in case we didn't get it. AO1, what's that stand for?
It's Audience of One, because when I'm out here, I'm really only playing for one person. And I'm obviously playing for my teammates, but in the end of things, only one person's opinion matters, and that's the good man upstairs.
You guys talk about that, you and your teammates?
Yes, sir. We have a lot of conversations like that, as much as I can. Trying to, because not everybody shares the same beliefs as me. It's not. I'm not trying to force it onto them, but I'm trying to share them with what I believe to be true and what has saved me, and try to help them out with that.
That's a great message. I remember before games last year, you and a couple guys, I think 3 other guys, would go off to the side.
Yes, do
you do that again this year?
Yes, sir. I did it, but I was luckily be a captain this year, so I couldn't do it right before the game. So right during kickoff, me and a couple guys right down here on the end of the sideline praying over the game and hoping to keep everybody safe.
Speaking of captains, then I'll let you go. You, Davin, and Jackson.
Yes, sir.
Davin's really making a big difference so far on the offensive side of the ball.
Yes,
and then tell me about Jackson.
So Jackson Smith, he was looking to be one of our top guys coming back from last year. Unfortunately, he got hurt at Athens. Loved the kid. He was the brains out there at receiver, helping everybody out, knew where everybody should be, knew every route. Was always perfect with his routes, caught the ball when he needed to. And last year, we had Braden, so he was there when nobody else was open. He was always the guy I could go to. Yeah. And, it stinks not being able to have him, but he's a great kid, and we love to still have him out here on the field and just to have his influence over the team.
He's your captain. He's still helping the guys out?
Yes, sir. Comes to every practice.
Great. And then Davin, big target on the outside.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. Love throwing it to him. He's improved so much since his freshman year to his sophomore year, and now to his senior year. Hands have gotten so much better, and his route running's really, really taken a step up.
student section saying
Oh.
he's too little.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to be
Yes, sir.
saying that a lot this
Yes,
year,
sir,
right?
especially with that guy outside. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
40 seconds left in the game. Brooks Pengel, 3rd and 15. Look at that, Colin. He rolls right, and who else on the night? Davin Driscoll. No way. 30 seconds left. Yeah. Look at, you can hear John Hart AB going crazy. What a finish to this one. 34-31 in one of the best game night lives we've ever seen. Here's head coach Tony Kramer, exhausted